Hello, welcome to the review of the Division II 2020 NCAA Convention proposals. This presentation will provide you with an introduction to, an overview of, proposals set to be voted on by the membership. Let's start by talking about the publications associated with convention. The first is the initial publication of proposed legislation, or the IPOPL. This is produced every year by August 15th and contains the membership-sponsored proposals that were properly sponsored by the July 15th deadline. This document is not produced in hard copy, but is available on the NCAA website. The second publication of proposed legislation, or the SPOPL, is published every year by September 23rd. This document contains the membership-sponsored proposals that were included in the IPOPL, as well as the President's Council and Board of Governors sponsored proposals. This document is also available on the NCAA website, but is not released in hard copy. In terms of the order for the IPOPL and the SPOPL, these publications have the proposals listed in the order that they may appear in the manual. The next publication is the official notice. That document is released every November 15th and is a hard copy book. You can also download the official notice as a PDF on the NCAA website. The official notice is essentially a guide to the business session at convention. The white pages contain the membership-sponsored proposals and the President's Council and Board of Governors sponsored proposals, in the order in which they will be voted on at the business session. Additionally, the blue pages contain all of the legislative actions taken by the Management Council since the membership last met at convention. This includes all non-controversial and emergency proposals. So now that we have done an overview of the publications associated with convention, let's dive right into the 2020 convention proposals. The first proposal, 2-1, would require the president or chancellor of an active Division II member institution and an active member conference to designate an athletics diversity and inclusion designee to be the primary contact and conduit for diversity and inclusion-related information. If adopted, this proposal will have an August 1, 2020 effective date. The designation of an athletics diversity and inclusion designee represents the association's recognition of inclusion as a core value. This proposal is seeking to create a network of colleagues who will serve as the conduit for consistent and thorough distribution of diversity and inclusion-related information between conference offices, campuses, the athletic department, and the national office. The expectation is that this individual will clearly and effectively communicate with the athletic department and relevant campus leaders about NCAA information, resources, and opportunities related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Further, this individual may be either internal or external to the athletics department. However, it will be beneficial if this individual is in a leadership role or someone who is given regular access to high-level leaders to discuss equity, diversity, and inclusion matters and initiatives. It is recommended that this individual not be the director of athletics. Finally, the contact information for the designated staff member will be entered on the institution's or conference's NCAA sports sponsorship and demographic form. The second proposal, 2-2, would allow a current active Division II member conference to maintain a minimum of 8 active member institutions. At the 2012 NCAA Convention, the Division II membership adopted legislation to require that existing and new conferences have a minimum of 10 members by 2022. The aim of the proposal was to ensure long-term stability and viability of conferences. Under current legislation, an active Division II conference is required to have a minimum of 8 members and by 2022 must have 10 members in order to maintain voting conference status and have access to conference membership privileges. While there has been some membership growth, there has also been increased instability within the Division II conferences. Maintaining the 8-institution requirement for active Division II conferences will allow for current conferences who may be unable to locate new members due to attrition, location, or other factors to continue to provide services to their membership. Finally, this proposal will not impact the current requirements for new conferences trying to enter the conference membership process, who will still be required to have 10 active members before they can be admitted into the process. If adopted, this proposal will have an August 1, 2022 effective date. Proposal 2-3 will amend the service terms for the Division II President's Council members and the Chair and Vice Chair. Under current legislation, a member of the Division II President's Council may serve 4-year terms. Further, the Chair and Vice Chair of the Council may serve terms not to exceed 2 years. If adopted, this proposal will increase the terms of a member of the President's Council from 4 years to 6 years. This proposal will also increase the terms of the Chair and Vice Chair from 2 years to 3 years. Allowing council members to serve a 6-year term will bring greater continuity and stability of service to the President's Council. In addition to continuity for the President's Council, the increased length of service will assist with continuity of service by President's Council members on the NCAA Board of Governors and the Division II Planning and Finance Committee. Given the duties of the President's Council, including establishing the strategic direction of the division, longevity of service and historical memory will benefit the division overall. Finally, with the increase of service terms for council members, the service term for the chair and vice chair should also be increased. If adopted, this proposal will have an August 1, 2020 effective date for members serving on the President's Council on or after August 1, 2020. Proposal 2-4 would replace the permission to contact legislation related to 4-year college transfer student athletes with a notification of transfer model. This proposal will also require an institution to place a student athlete's written request for transfer into the NCAA transfer portal within 7 consecutive calendar days of receipt of written notification of transfer. Under current legislation, an institution may not have contact with a student athlete at another NCAA institution without first obtaining written permission from that institution. If the original institution grants the request, the second institution may contact the student athlete. However, if the original institution denies the request, the second institution may not contact the student athlete or encourage the transfer, and if the student athlete still transfers, the second institution may not provide athletics aid to the student athlete during their first academic year in residence. This proposal will replace the permission to contact model with a notification-based alternative and will improve the recruiting environment associated with 4-year college transfer student athletes. Pursuant to the notification of transfer model, a student athlete will be permitted to explore transfer opportunities at another institution once written notification is provided. Upon submitting written notification, a student athlete would be entered into the NCAA transfer portal, which will provide more transparency for coaches and student athletes. Finally, separating access to athletics aid from a permission to contact or a notification model will enhance student-athlete well-being because a student-athlete's eligibility for athletically related financial aid at a new institution will be based on the general legislative requirements applicable to all student-athletes. If adopted, this proposal will have an August 1, 2020 effective date for any 4-year college transfer student-athlete transferring during the 2020-2021 academic year and thereafter. The next proposal, 2-5, will eliminate the requirement that a current transcript must be provided to an institution prior to issuing a national letter of intent or written offer of athletically related financial aid. If this proposal is adopted, it will have an immediate effective date. Prior to an institution providing a high school, college preparatory school, 2-year or 4-year college prospective student-athlete with a national letter of intent or written offer of athletically related financial aid, the prospective student-athlete must first present the institution with a current high school, college preparatory school, or college official or unofficial transcript. This proposal will eliminate the requirement that the transcript provided to an institution must be current. Further, this proposal will help ease the burden of compliance for prospective student-athletes, high school counselors, coaches, and compliance administrators without a negative impact on the recruiting process. Finally, eliminating the current transcript requirement will avoid additional paperwork for prospective student-athletes, high school counselors, collegiate coaches, and institutional compliance administrators. The immediate effective date will eliminate the requirement to receive a current transcript prior to offering a national letter of intent or written offer of athletics aid during spring 2020. Proposal 2-6 will increase the permissible length of tryout activities for a prospective student-athlete in the sport of golf from 2 to 5 hours. If adopted, this proposal will have an immediate effective date. Under current legislation, the length of a tryout for a prospective student-athlete shall not exceed 2 hours. In golf, however, it takes approximately 5 hours to complete a round of golf, which exceeds the 2 hours allowed for a permissible tryout. Due to the unique nature of the sport, it is necessary for a Division II coach to observe a prospective student-athlete for an entire round of golf in order to effectively evaluate a prospect's ability to manage the mental and physical requirements of the sport. This change will also align the tryout legislation with other areas of the legislation, like the daily and weekly hour limitations, where golf has been provided extended time for activities due to the time required to complete a round of golf. Finally, an immediate effective date will allow golf prospective student-athletes to participate in an extended tryout during the spring and summer of 2020. Proposal 2-7 will amend the women's basketball recruiting calendar in 2 ways. It will extend the spring contact period through the 3rd weekend in May. It will also eliminate the May 18th to June 14th evaluation period. With Life in the Balance serving as Division II's philosophy, this proposal seeks to provide balance for prospective student-athletes and head and assistant women's basketball coaches. Establishing the quiet period following the 3rd weekend in May through June 14th will allow coaches to have these weekends free from recruiting obligations and provide balance in their personal and professional lives. Further, eliminating this evaluation period will create consistency with Division II men's basketball, as well as align this portion of the spring recruiting calendar with Division I women's basketball. Finally, this proposal will support responsible use of time and resources across Division II. If adopted, this proposal will have an August 1, 2020 effective date. Proposal 2-8 deals with the reassessment of a transfer student-athlete from a non-Division II institution. Under this proposal, the reassessment of the participation of a transfer student-athlete from a non-Division II institution, so an NCAA Divisions I and III institution, NAIA, or 2-year college, will be based on the legislation where the student-athlete's participation occurred. Further, under this proposal, a Division III student-athlete who is charged with a season of participation for practice only under Division III legislation will not be charged with a season of competition upon transferring to a Division II institution. If adopted, this proposal will have an immediate effective date for a student-athlete who transferred to a Division II institution during the 2018-19 academic year and thereafter. Under current legislation, a Division II institution is required to reassess a transfer student-athlete's participation history prior to the student-athlete's enrollment at the Division II institution to determine if the transfer student-athlete used a season of competition based on Division II legislation. The Division II Committee for Student-Athlete Reinstatement and Legislation Committee agreed that a transfer student-athlete's participation should be based on the legislation of the institution where the participation occurred, since the student-athlete made the decision to participate based on the understanding of the rules that applied to them at the time competition occurred. Finally, establishing an exception for a Division III transfer who is charged with a season of participation for practice only under Division III legislation will allow that individual to transfer and not be charged with a use of a season in Division II. Proposal 2-9 will allow contests played as part of the Conference Challenge event in the sport of basketball to be included in both the numerator and denominator and the first half of season calculation for a hardship waiver. Under current legislation, all competition, excluding alumni games, fundraising activities, celebrity sport activities, scrimmages, and exhibition contests against outside competition shall be counted in the numerator for the hardship waiver calculation. In the sport of basketball student-athletes are currently at a disadvantage when determining the percent calculation as well as the first half of season calculation for hardship waivers. For the percent calculation, Conference Challenge event contests are included in the numerator but not in the denominator. The first half of season calculation is also based on the maximum permissible number of contests for basketball, which does not include Conference Challenge event contests. Finally, the calculation should be altered to also include the Conference Challenge event contest in the denominator for percent calculations, as well as overall for the first half of season calculations to avoid an unfair disadvantage for basketball student-athletes. If adopted, this proposal will have an August 1, 2020 effective date for any incapacitating injury or illness or other extenuating circumstance occurring on or after August 1, 2020. The next proposal, 2-10, deals with fall championship sports and specifies that fall championship sports may not commence weight training, conditioning, and/or team activities before the institution's fourth day of classes for the institution's second term of the academic year. If adopted, this proposal will have an August 1, 2020 effective date. Currently, during the spring term or winter quarter, fall championship sports may participate in weight training, conditioning, and/or team activities from the beginning of the spring term or winter quarter until the start of the fall sports non-championship segment. However, spring championship sports must wait until September 7th or the fourth day of classes in the fall semester before they can begin participation in countable athletically related activities outside of the playing season. This proposal would more closely align legislation for fall sports student-athletes with spring sports student-athletes, which will also support student-athlete well-being and academic success by allowing them to acclimate to classes before beginning out-of-season workouts. Finally, this proposal will also provide compliance administrators with a 3-day period at the beginning of the term to focus on certification issues that arise for sports in their championship season before addressing out-of-season student-athletes. Proposal 2-11 deals with the men's and women's soccer preseason start date and will allow men's and women's soccer to engage in their first contest a week earlier, so the Thursday preceding August 30th, in the years in which the Division II National Championships Festival occurs in the fall. Under current legislation, and due to recent changes in the soccer championship date formula, soccer loses a week of its competitive season during years in which the festival occurs in the fall, due to the timing of the festival. Further, the loss of a week also results in less time for the student-athletes to recover between matches. The compacted season reduces the opportunity for non-conference and region play, which is essential to the ranking and selection of teams for the postseason. This exception will provide student-athletes with the opportunity to participate in Division II's marquee championship event without having to experience the negative impact of a shortened season. Finally, a similar proposal was previously adopted for women's volleyball at the 2018 NCAA Convention. If adopted, this proposal will have an August 1, 2020 effective date. Proposal 2-12 will add women's acrobatics and tumbling as an emerging sport, as well as establish legislation related to financial aid, playing and practice seasons, and membership. If adopted, this proposal will have an August 1, 2020 effective date. The sport's potential for growth and support from the sport's national governing body supports the recommendation to add women's acrobatics and tumbling as an emerging sport. In addition, acrobatics and tumbling leadership has demonstrated and articulated how the experience of an acrobatics and tumbling student-athlete is comparable to the experience of an NCAA sports student-athlete, and how acrobatics and tumbling student-athletes are fully integrated into athletic departments. Further, the existing organizational structure and bylaw supports efforts to integrate NCAA values and legislation into current operations. Finally, there is a commitment at the collegiate level to providing robust participation opportunities during the regular season and postseason, including the national championship. Acrobatics and tumbling is being recommended as a spring season sport. Lastly, Proposal 2-13 will add women's wrestling as an emerging sport, as well as establish legislation relating to recruiting, eligibility, financial aid, playing and practice seasons, and membership. If adopted, this proposal will have an August 1, 2020 effective date. The continued growth in high school girls wrestling and the number of collegiate institutions sponsoring the sport support this recommendation. In addition, the sport is relatively inexpensive to sponsor. Finally, there is a commitment at the collegiate level to increase participation opportunities for a more diverse population of student-athletes, such as race and ethnicity, nationality, socioeconomic status, and body size and type, as well as to increase coaching opportunities for a more diverse population of female coaches in intercollegiate women's wrestling. Well, there you have it. That concludes the overview of the Division II 2020 NCAA Convention proposals. Please be on the lookout for the 2020 NCAA Convention Division II Legislative Proposals Question and Answer Guide, which will be released in early December of this year, to assist with any questions you may have. See you at convention.